Here's a question. How often do you think about your drinking water? For millions of Canadians, we've been conditioned to take our basic necessities in life for granted. We live, after all, in a first world nation. In a land where we throw away nearly 80 kilos of food per person per year. In a land where we have over 7% of the world's natural fresh water, despite having only 1/2% of the overall population. What would you do if your water supply was useless? Meet the Asubpeeschoseewagong, also known as the Grassy Narrows First Nation. Located on the English Wabagoon River system, the people of Grassy Narrows have depended on this fresh water source for longer than Canada has even been a nation. The river has been sustenance, has been vital hydration, has been home for generations. And that home has been destroyed. The series of relevant events in this disaster began in 1873, when the Government of Canada signed Treaty 3 with the Ojibwe of northwestern Ontario. This included, of course, the Grassy Narrows First Nation. Though they ceded all of the land between Manitoba and what were then the borders of Ontario, the First Nation were granted a federal reserve on their traditional lands along the Wabagoon River. In 1913, Dryden Timber started their first craft pulp mill in this exact location. And unknown to the people of Grassy Narrows, starting around 1962, Dryden Chemical Limited, then a subsidiary of British multinational Reed International, started disposing of one of their toxic waste products directly into the fresh water supply that was the Wabagoon River system. And as you would have guessed it, the powers that be in the 1960s and 1970s Dryden Chemical Limited decided, of course, that sharing this information with the locals was not particularly high on their list of operational priorities. The pollution continued for a period of 7 years before the consequences made themselves clear.
My parents had mercury poisoning. They all died. And all my brothers have mercury poisoning, and they have died. Now I'm sort of the last oldest one.
It was in 1969 that the toxic hazards were identified. Testing downriver from the plant indicated high concentrations of mercury present in both the water itself and the wildlife that called it home. These effects were heavily felt, of course, by the people who called it home as well.
The water in there is not safe.
For those who relied on the river as a source of fresh water and a large source of their food, life itself had become suddenly and quite literally toxic. Though mercury-based processes make terrific bleaching agents, mercury itself is a rather nasty chemical contaminant, infamous as the toxic element in vintage thermometers. Now you may be asking, isn't mercury insoluble in water? Well, elemental mercury is insoluble. However, certain bacteria, of the types definitely found in natural water sources, are capable of breaking down that elemental mercury into a compound called methylmercury. Many of these aquatic organisms are then either killed or captured and eaten by the native peoples of the area. Even worse is the fact that since methylmercury binds to the protein in the fish, it cannot be removed by cooking or cleaning the fish. The negative health effects of ingested methylmercury are devastating. Common side effects of mercury poisoning in the human body are issues with the brain and spinal cord in particular. These include abnormal brain development in unborn children, as well as mood swings, memory loss, mental disturbance, and muscle weakness in adults. Continued ingestion of mercury, the kind that goes unchecked for 7 years or more, can even result in kidney failure. the Grassy Narrows First Nation spent decades relying on water distribution in the form of plastic bottles and filtered jugs, handed out to each family. It wasn't until recently, in fact, in the last 5 years, that the provincial government of Ontario and the federal government of Canada have made serious commitments, to the tune of over $1.5 billion, to tackling the water crises that plague so many rural residents of the province to this day. As of October of 2020, the Grassy Narrows First Nation has had time to finally utilize the sorely needed government funding to upgrade their vital water infrastructure, and they currently have their freshwater system restored. This hasn't yet decontaminated the surrounding water for aquatic life, but providing clean drinking water has at least eased some of the stress that has plagued the First Nation as a result of the chemical pollution. Even better is that, due to the massive amount of government funding, Indigenous Services Canada is happy to announce that since 2015, over 67% of long-term drinking water advisories have been lifted, with the vast majority of the rest already under construction or already completed and just waiting on approval to lift the advisory. This isn't to say that the work is done though. As of the creation of this video, which is July 7th, 2021, there are still 60 long-term drinking water advisories in effect. According to the United Nations, the ultimate goal is to provide by 2030 universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. We are on our way to meeting that goal. Learn what you can do to aid in or raise awareness of this issue by visiting the Government of Canada website, Achieving Clean Drinking Water in First Nations Communities, the link for which can be found in the description of this video.